Hello, it's Mrs. Wallace. How are you? I just wanted to do this quick video in case you missed class on Tuesday or Thursday. This way you would have a little bit of a chance to see some of the notes that we did in class. We're looking at the circular flow model, a model that we've looked at in the past, and we are headed into looking at the law of demand. And so one reason for starting with the circular flow model is when we look at market and we're looking at a market economy, we know that we've kind of got two different groups participating in the market economy, businesses or firms and individuals, sometimes called households. And we know that there's two different markets, the product market, but also the resource market. In the product market, individuals are on the demand side. They are consumers and they're consuming goods and services, made by businesses, right? In the resource market, we know that that's flipped. In the resource market, businesses are on the demand side. They are purchasing resources that are available because individuals are supplying land, labor, capital, and so on. So we will be starting out with the product market. There will be a time when we'll look at the resource or the factor market. We'll spend some time with demand and supply, but for our purposes now, think of consumers on the demand side. So, the Coke that you got at Chick-fil-A, we have demand for that. What will be the quantity demanded when prices are set at a certain amount? Okay, so, look at demand is very, very connected to particular products, goods or services. Could be haircuts, could be Coca-Colas, could be laptops, whatever it is. Okay, and we'll get to the next slide. So a little bit about demand defined, just some notes to jot down. Demand is the different quantities of goods that consumers are willing and able to buy at different prices. So we're interested in, how to measure demand, and note that there's demand if consumers are willing to buy it. So somebody wants a Lexus, or somebody wants a Coca-Cola or whatever, and being able to buy it means, effective demand means there's actually got to be a way that somebody can pay for that good, at a particular price. So I might be, interested in buying a particular product, like a vacation to Florida, but if I can't afford to pay for that, then I don't really have effective demand for that particular product. So, we have the example here, Bill Gates is able to purchase a Ferrari. If he doesn't want one, he doesn't have demand for one, right? Same thing with me. I might want one, but I don't have demand for one because I'm not able to buy one. The law of demand, which is actually going to be the really important thing on this slide, is the trend that there's generally a relationship, an inverse relationship, negative relationship, indirect relationship between price and quantity demanded. So in other words, when the price is increasing, the quantity demanded is decreasing. If the price is decreasing, the quantity demanded is increasing. And we kind of know that intuitively. If you've ever gone to the store intending to buy, 12 Krispy Kreme donuts, and all of a sudden the price is higher, you might buy, less, fewer donuts, because ultimately the price is higher. When the price starts to tick up, we tend to make different decisions about the goods that we want to buy. Okay, and all of that decision making is what we're trying to tap into, when we look at the law of demand. Okay, an example of the law of demand, and we actually did this in class, and I'll just kind of note a few numbers here. Let's see if I can get a little pen here on the screen. Okay. Let's see, let's just try a pen. This is a demand schedule, and a demand schedule would kind of tell us at given prices. So let's say I have in front of me a bag of candy, a bag of Kit Kats, and maybe we could offer this bag of Kit Kats, to members of the class for a variety of different, amounts of money, right? Different prices. Let's say $1, $2, let's say, $3. Okay, hard to write on this pen, and also $4. Okay, so let's imagine now that we have at these given prices, what would be the quantity demanded? And let's say at $1, let's imagine, and I'm just making these figures up, maybe 20 students in a class of 22 kids, are really saying, hey, I would buy that bag of candy, for 22, for $1, I would buy it. Maybe 20 out of 22 kids. Some kids maybe don't like candy, they wouldn't buy it. and this would vary depending on the group that you were working with. It could be market demand for the entire U.S. economy. If the price of a bag of Kit Kats, was $1, what would be the quantity demanded? If we look at the price of say it going up to $2, right, we might start to see our quantity demanded decrease a little bit. And this is kind of what we mean by the law of demand. And maybe if the price is as high as, say $4, we might say, okay, maybe, only 5 students are going to be interested in getting that. Only 5 quantities of bags of candy, are going to be demanded. Okay. And, we can start to look at graphing this also basically by plotting some points. So what we would be doing is looking at price, okay, and looking at quantity demanded. Okay. So price is on the y-axis, quantity demanded is on the x-axis. And we're basically looking at plotting some points that are on our demand schedule. When the price is really low, let's say $1, the quantity demanded is very high. Let's say it's 20, okay? And there we go, plotted points, woo, okay? When the price is high, okay, let's say $4, right? What happens to the quantity demanded? It's much lower, right? It's gonna be 5, okay? So if we put some points here, maybe this is when it's $1, this is when it's $4, we can get a sense of a demand curve, okay? And that's essentially the way we would look at demand, okay? Let me go back to okay, there's my little arrow, okay? Why does the law of demand occur? Okay, so there's 3 reasons why we tend to have a downward sloping demand curve, okay? And there are some exceptions. We talked about this a little bit in class, but sometimes you might have a luxury good that might, have status attached to it. So for some very wealthy people, they might actually buy more of a good if the price is high and goes higher because they think it's the best of something. Like, I don't know, expensive coats or something like that, expensive cars. The other thing you might, have as an exception to the law of demand is something called a Giffen good. A Giffen good is usually an inferior good, and it's a very rare occurrence. So, an example of a Giffen good would be potatoes. During the Irish potato famine, you might have had an increase, say, in the price of potatoes, but because people are largely subsiding on a diet of potatoes, they might eat less of any other good and actually eat more potatoes. So the higher a price goes, it could actually encourage you to have more of the good. Those are very rare occurrences. So like this notion of like exceptions, very, very, very rare. Okay. So when we talk about the law of demand, this idea that, there's a negative relationship between price and quantity demanded. So if price is going up, quantity demanded is going to be going down. If that's the case, that's the law of demand. The substitution effect is one of the reasons why this happens, okay? So the nature of the substitution effect is the following. If the price goes up for a product or down, a consumer is going to have the ability to maybe purchase more or less of a substitute good. This is only an effect and a reason for the law of demand if a good has a substitute. So for example, if margarine and butter are actually substitutes and the price goes up for butter, a consumer might actually buy, less butter and more margarine because there is a pretty good substitute for butter, right? If butter like quadrupled in price and margarine didn't, we could consider, consider margarine, sorry. So the effect of having substitutes. Now, of course, some products don't really have substitutes or not really good substitutes. So gasoline, for example, if all of a sudden the price of gasoline was to go up really high, like 50% or something like that, it would be really difficult to have a situation where you could, come up with an alternative, right? So we get into that topic a little bit more later in the course. The income effect is another force that tends to create this downward sloping demand curve or this relationship between price and quantity demanded that is indirect, okay, or inverse. The income effect, like the substitution effect, is like suggesting if the price goes up or down for a product, there is going to be a change in quantity demanded. In this case, the income effect has to do with purchasing power. If you go to the store and you have expected to spend $20 on one pair of jeans, and all of a sudden you go to the store and jeans are on sale and they're $10, even though your income, the money in your pocket, has not changed at all, it feels like it has. Okay, so it feels like the purchasing power, you can buy double the number of jeans, and often you do. You might walk out of the store with two pairs of jeans because you can, because you have more purchasing power. When the price goes up, you have the opposite problem. You still have $20 in your pocket, but now the jeans are $30 and you're completely, unsure of what to do. That's the income effect. Okay, so you might buy less of a good, if the price goes up, might buy more of a good if the price goes down, because it relates to purchasing power. The last reason why we get that downward sloping demand curve and that negative relationship between price and quantity demanded has to do with something called the law of diminishing marginal utility. This is something we also spend a little bit more time with at the end of the course, but kind of understand that when we are consuming marginal units of a good. So imagine Halloween candy and eating consecutive Kit Kats. In front of me, I have some Halloween candy left over, and I have like maybe 7 Kit Kats in front of me. The very first Kit Kat, if I haven't had a single one all day, is going to give me a great amount of utility. And I might even be able to measure that for myself. I might say, wow, this Kit Kat gives me 100 utils of satisfaction. As I consume marginal units of Kit Kats, at a certain point, maybe not the second, maybe not the 5th, but by like the 80th Kit Kat, I will see diminishing marginal utility. The 80th Kit Kat is likely not to give me as much satisfaction as the first Kit Kat did. And because that's the case, and that tends to be the case, oftentimes when we buy more and more and more of a unit, we need to have the price lower in order to convince us that we really want that. If the 80th Kit Kat, isn't that exciting for me, then I need that 80th Kit Kat to be really, really cheap. Otherwise, I'm certainly not going to buy it. It's another reason that reinforces that negative relationship between price and quantity demand. Okay, that's what that has to do with the law of demand. You can look at this in the Disneyland pricing strategy. These are theme park tickets, and you have a 1-day hopper pass and a 2-day hopper pass, all the way up to a 6-part hopper pass. And one of the things that we might note is there is a lot of interest in the 1-day and the 2-day park hopper ticket, because those are kind of good investments, right? You want to have the park hopper pass. When you get to the 6th day or the 7th day or the 80th day, we start to see save up to $40, when you buy online. And if we look at the marginal change, right? How much more, do you get? How much more did it cost you? The marginal cost is decreasing, right? You kind of have marginal utility that is less and less and less, right? Why is it the case that the 6-day, hopper pass? Because, lots of people don't really want to stay 6 days maybe in the same park. Last thing that we'll do on this video is just showing you the graphical representation, and we kind of did it in my little scribble before. The demand curve is downward sloping, and it shows an inverse relationship between price. Price is always going to be on the y-axis. If you're a math person, don't let it get you down. It's just kind of convention, even though it's mixed up in terms of dependent and independent variables. And the quantity demanded is always on the x-axis. When reading a demand curve, we're going to assume that you're always not including other variables, right? Everything else is held constant, okay? We're going to relax that assumption in a minute, but for now, ceteris paribus, okay? We looked at this particular graph. So this has a demand schedule where the price is $1, $2, $3, $4, and so on. We have the quantity demanded. So at any given price, the quantity demanded, let's say in a market or in our class, if our class was a market, when the price is $1, the quantity demanded. The number of boxes of cereal, right, that are demanded might be 80, and it might be because one student wants 25 and one student wants, whichever, or every single student wants a certain quantity. It doesn't have to be even, but we can total up the quantity demanded at the price of $1 and kind of poll, what is it that we get as our total quantity demanded, 80 boxes. When the price goes up to $2 and $3, we start to see that the quantity demanded starts to go down when the price goes up to $4 and $5. And so what we're noticing is we're going to see a demand curve that, whoops, let me just get this on here. Sorry. It's going to look like that. Okay, so we're just plotting points at the price of $5. We have a $10 quantity demanded. At a price of $4, we start to get a 20 quantity demanded, and so on, and we have a downward sloping demand curve. Okay, so right now we're not working with equations. We're just looking at kind of plotted points, and sometimes we're even using like hypothetical demand curves, right? Just to kind of express some of the concepts and what's happening. And this is always going to be the way you will look at what happens when the price of a good that you have a graph for. So we have a graph, quantity of cereal and price of cereal. We're graphing what happens to cereal. And this would be all cereal. It's not just one cereal like Life or something like that. It's all cereal. We can get a sense of what happens when the price changes. So if the price goes from $4 to $2, we're moving from a quantity demanded of 20 all the way down to 50, right? 30 more boxes would be, demanded at the lower price of $2, okay? I hope that helps. The last thing we'll note is where we get market demand. Sometimes we're using a demand curve for one person. So like Mrs. Wallace's demand for, coffee in the morning. What happens every time I go to get a coffee in the morning? What happens if price changes, right? We could also look at what is the market for all BCA teachers or all Americans who are buying coffee in the morning. And so you would take each individual person's demand schedule. So, here we have, Billy and Jean and other individuals at any given price of $5, we can just quantify, one person is demanding 1 and somebody else is demanding 9. So altogether the quantity demanded is 10. So sometimes we're looking at market demand. Sometimes it's an individual demand curve. Okay. So you're like literally adding demand curves together to get market demand. Okay. I'm going to stop there so you can take a break for a little bit, and then we'll do the video for what we did on Thursday. Okay. Be well.